All right, everyone. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. It's a Monday night at midnight, Tuesday morning. Glad you could join us for some college football talk. Of course, the playoffs have been selected and all the bowl games as well. 41 bowl games. We're going to review just as many as we can possibly get to. We've already started our breakdown of the playoffs. Please check out our video breaking down the numbers between LSU and Oklahoma and also the numbers game between Ohio State and Clemson. I have released some bowl history videos as well. We featured a number of teams last year, and I'm taking your requests in regards to outlining and reviewing bowl history for whatever team you would like, as long as they get views. Okay. We're going to take some calls here, 860-325-3687.
The call will start at the beep.
Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Marcus, George, I've got this all figured out.
You got to figure it out. Please,
yes.
Please, let me in on this.
Yeah.
I have been trying to figure it out for, I don't want to say how
Miami.
long, but I've been figuring it out or attempting to for a long time.
All right, here's how this should unfold. Jim Harbaugh says, fuck you to Michigan and goes to Miami.
That's the last time you're going to say that word, George. I can't stop it for just a second. Just be quiet. Be quiet for just a second, please. Please, George. Please, George.
I said, what the heck?
Let me explain something to everybody out there. Regardless of my personal standards, YouTube will flag me, do whatever they want, shut me down, demonetize me if they catch this over and over and over and over. So I find it in the comment section all the time and I take it off. What do you mean if I believe it? I don't care what you think. It matters what is going to happen to me. It's not your YouTube channel.
I can see that point. I agree.
So a couple cuss words is not a big deal. Just a second, George. A couple cuss words is not a big deal to me. But if it goes past that, again, it becomes an issue with YouTube. So continue.
Right. No, listen, I do understand.
Okay.
The AI. Anyhow. So Jim Harbaugh says, heck to you. This is a debacle at Michigan, right? And he goes to Miami. He's reinvigorated. I have to get Miami back in the national prominence. I am so hurt. I feel bruised. What is going on in Miami? I think Harbaugh should go to Miami. And I think Mark D'Antonio should go somewhere else, too. These are great coaches, but they're just bogged down, man. You know, they need a fresh start.
So Mark D'Antonio just is going to go somewhere, and Jim Harbaugh should go to Miami.
Well, D'Antonio probably won't, but if I was Harbaugh, oh my God, I wish that Miami would fire Manny Diaz before the bowl game and announce Jim Harbaugh as their new coach. They could save all their recruiting, you know? And he would go sleep in their treehouse, and they would appreciate it. I hate Michigan deserves what they're getting for abandoning Harbaugh. I mean, Harbaugh can't take listening to what's going on in social media. It affects him. But Miami would be glad to have him. Ole Miss thinks they just won the national championship because Lane Kiffin signed with them. That's what Miami needs. They need a coach.
Well, they've got a coach right now, and he's not doing a very good job, but he's only had one season. So we'll wait and see what Manny Diaz has for us. I think the fan base is basically split because it's only been one season. And hopefully they can beat Louisiana Tech. Hopefully for them, I don't much care, but hopefully for them, they're at least as good as Louisiana Tech or better.
It doesn't matter. If Miami doesn't announce they fired Manny Diaz before the bowl game, I'm disappointed in them. I hope they appoint an interim coach. They're like, we made a mistake. I'm sorry. The Gator Nation would never put up with this. If we go 6-6, you're fired. We went 4-7, we fired a coach. There is no second chance. Are you crazy?
Am I crazy? Oh, you.
No, I'm just saying they have a top 10 roster. There's no excuse for
Miami's got a top 10 roster. Maybe Miami people believe that. Miami does not have a top 10 roster. Top 20, 25.
Appalachian State has a top 10 roster. Miami definitely has a top 10 roster. These are all good players.
Appalachian State has a top 10 roster.
I'm just saying, these are all good players, man. They're all 6'7" and weigh 350 pounds.
At different levels, George.
It all comes down to coaching. If you look at the analytics, Florida has the best player development. We're actually ahead of everybody in the country. We take 3 stars and put them in the NFL. They take 5 stars and you go in the 7th round, you know?
Well, I don't necessarily know if that statement's going to hold up, but I get your point. Dan Mullen is doing a much better job than anybody else in the state. There's no question about that. It's not even close. Correct.
Here's my motto. Georgia taking 5 stars and turning them into 3 stars since 19 forever. That Georgia will never get another 5-star. That shit's over. That stuff's over. Cow poop. I'm so upset. I'm upset about Miami. I'm upset about Georgia. I mean, these guys have ruined my season.
These are your competitors and rivals, George.
Yeah, but I want them to be good. I don't want them to lose to anybody else but us. And same way with Auburn. I don't mind if you lose to us, but other than that, I start getting upset.
All right, George.
I mean, what the hell's going on in Athens? That's what I want to know.
They've got a talented roster. They had a bunch of injuries. They're nowhere close to LSU, at least on that particular Saturday, but they're doing a nice job at Athens. They're fine. They've got a few things to figure out in regards to maybe the offensive side of the ball, but they've got plenty of talent. They've got the best roster in the division and maybe the second or third best roster in the conference. They are that close. They are very close.
My hope is that they keep Kirby Smart, that they don't fire him. That's my hope.
If Kirby Smart gets fired, then there is a problem with college football.
Right. I hope they keep him.
They're keeping Kirby Smart. You don't have to think another second about that.
I'm so happy, and maybe Jake Fromm will come back.
He should come back. He's got he has pretty much regressed or pretty much stayed the same quarterback for the last 3 years. He has not progressed or developed.
You know what Georgia should do?
I don't know. Recruit?
No.
Win?
Get Felipe Franks out of the transfer portal. He can throw the ball 100 yards. He's incredible. You got to have a backup next year. Felipe Franks would love to play against Florida and Jacksonville if Jake Fromm goes down. Yeah. Be like, zip, zip, zip. That boy can throw the ball. He's so good. It just didn't work out at Florida.
I got to think that Felipe Franks is headed somewhere else, not Georgia.
I know. Where do you think he might end up?
That's a good question. Felipe Franks. If I'm Felipe Franks,
It really is.
think you just have to basically review. Wait a second. Did you ask a question, George? Did you ask a question here?
Okay, go ahead. Where?
Okay. If I'm Felipe Franks, I want to stay in the Power 5. I want to go to a place where I'm seeing that a quarterback is graduating and moving on, and I can win the job. But that also has a competitive shot. Oklahoma has plenty of quarterbacks, including Spencer Rattler, that are better than Felipe Franks in line.
You know, at Florida, we have a nickname for Felipe Franks. Do you know what that is?
I don't.
Runs like a drunken deer. It's an Indian term. I've never seen anybody run like Felipe Franks. He's the most hilarious thing ever. He gets like 5 yards every step, and he changes. He actually fakes people out. It's the most hilarious thing I've ever seen. He's like 55 yards down the field. runs like drunken deer. That's his name. I love that guy so much.
All right, George. Next time I fire up a live stream about Felipe Franks, you will be taking center stage on that one.
It could be Oklahoma.
It could be, but he's not going to start there.
He could take him as a pet project.
George, thanks for the call, man. We always appreciate
I love
it.
you more.
You have a good one.
I love you more. Bye.
Yeah. All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We've got more calls coming in. So again, I had attempted to, maybe I'm just going to have to make this a video in which I respond to the Clemson folks that just hate my guts. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, it's McD Sports 4. How are you doing?
Hey, McD. If there's anything that I can bet on, there's going to be some level of rotation between you, George, and DeAndre as the first caller.
Yeah, George beat me to the punch
He did.
this time. But about what George was saying about Felipe Franks. How about Felipe Franks at LSU? What do you think about that? Joe Burrow being gone. I don't know the quarterback situation.
Exactly. So for me to respond intelligently, I'd have to review the backup quarterback situation. But Spencer Rattler is the backup, the 5-star in waiting at Oklahoma. So Felipe Franks would have to consider that. LSU, I don't know. I think Miles Brennan transferred. I believe, if I remember correctly, we certainly reviewed the LSU quarterback situation in the offseason, but one of those guys transferred. So I don't remember and recall exactly who's still there.
Yeah, I don't know the situation, but if he wants to stay in the SEC, that's a good school. I also look at maybe if he wants to get out of the SEC, maybe like a Virginia with Bronco Mendenhall. But I didn't call about Felipe Franks. I called for a few reasons. Reason number one, I took the sad pleasure of watching 2 Terps games today. Both of them they lost to review the games to get basically a better knowledge of the games. And let me tell you something. I'm very disgusted from what I saw. Obviously, even watching it again even made me feel worse. But I watched it. I don't watch the games with the announcers. I don't because I just never really have. But I watch these games with the announcers, and all I want to say is you can say all these nice things about Mike Locksley saying how you want your son to play for him and everything, but if he doesn't win football games, no one wants to play for you. So he better start winning football games next season. Because that's all I heard when they brought up Mike Locksley. Oh, you want your son to play for him. Oh, he's such a good guy. That's fine and dandy, but there is no way there's just no way no one's going to play for us if we're going to go 3-9 year in and year out. I mean, I looked at the schedule next year. I'm telling you this right now. Early 2020 prediction is 7-5 for the Terps, but. It better be a minimum of 5-7 from Locksley, and it better be like a 5-7 with some competitive losses.
We're on a 5 or 10 second delay, McD. So watch your screen to see my reaction when you said 7-5. You might have missed it by now.
I think I did. I'm not really looking at the screen. I'm watching.
Gotcha. So you can imagine my response. And reaction when you said 7-5 for Maryland next year.
Yeah, next year. I'm going to go back and watch it, but I'm watching it and then I'll tell you what I think of it. But these commentators, I think that they think he's such a great guy and everything. I saw your reaction, Mark. You gotta believe in your team. But I just feel like he needs to win games next year. So that's the first point. The second point I want to make is about some of these bowl games. I think it's absolutely hilarious that we're getting Michigan versus Alabama. I do think Alabama will win at the end of the day. But I think, listen, if Harbaugh can win this game against Nick Saban, I think it quiets down the talks despite him not being Ohio State once, having trouble against James Franklin, which, by the way, he got an extension, but I don't know why people were considering him for the FSU job thinking he was going to leave Penn State, but that's for another day. But he can't really beat him. He couldn't beat Brian Kelly the last time he faced him. That's a rival weight there as well. So if Jim Harbaugh, if he could go ahead and beat Nick Saban, I think that could quiet down the talks for 2020 at least.
Unfortunately for Jim Harbaugh in Michigan, what is going to be the narrative and the talking points if Michigan beats Alabama is that Alabama didn't care, they didn't show up because they didn't make the playoff, and therefore they didn't try and they didn't care. And that's going to be the big excuse from a lot of people. I'm not saying every Alabama fan, because certainly many of them will take the high road. Like any fan base, they're going to be split between the ones that take the high road and say, we got beat by a better team on this particular day. And then others, and maybe even some players, a la the Georgia players against Texas in the Sugar Bowl last year, are going to make big excuses about, well, this wasn't the playoff. We expect to go to the playoff. Therefore, we didn't try. We didn't care. We didn't show up, which is a bunch of garbage.
And speaking about players not showing up for bowl games, not playing, I actually want to give props to Jonathan Taylor, and I forget the quarterback's name at Kentucky. They both said they will be playing in the bowl games. I'm very happy that we're going to see Jonathan Taylor play in the Rose Bowl. And I know the player for Kentucky is a quarterback. His name escapes me.
Are you talking about Terry Wilson? Terry Wilson's going to be back?
No, not Terry Wilson. His quarterback that's playing now for Kentucky.
Well, they start
eligible for who?
They started Lynn Bowden for a number of games, their wide receiver.
Yeah, him. I think him. He made himself eligible for the draft, but he said he's going to play in the bowl game. And I think that has a lot to say about Mark Stoops. I mean, last year, Barry Snow Jr. and Josh Allen could have not played in the Citrus Bowl last year, and both of them decided to play in it. So I think that has a lot to say about Mark Stoops. Mark Stoops. So I want to give them some props. And then I want to make fun of Arkansas and UTSA. I'm making fun of Arkansas. There's nothing against Sam Pittman, but I did not know how you could hire a coach from that Georgia offensive staff after from what we saw basically throughout the year, especially in that LSU game. I don't know how you could hire someone as a head coach from that Georgia offensive staff. I mean, it just amazes me. And what's even worse is that UTSA hires somebody from the Arkansas coaching staff, which also just really amazes me. I really do not understand how you can hire coaches from teams that, well, not so much Georgia, but like Arkansas. I just don't get how you can hire a coach from a team that absolutely is a dumpster fire, to say the least.
So everything that you just said, McD, makes total sense. Makes total sense. Yeah, it seems to make no sense that you would take a underachieving unit and then take a coach from that unit that's underachieving with NFL talent, and that you would want them to come to your program and fix your program. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But let's also understand, so on the surface, your point is 100% valid. Let's also understand that whether it be in business or in athletics or whatever the industry, there are capable people that work for bad companies. So there are companies that are failing but have really talented, intelligent people working for them. So that does happen.
I mean, I understand that, but I mean, I would not have hired anybody from that Arkansas coaching staff. I mean, Sam Pittman, he had ties to Arkansas. He was the O-line coach, I think, for like 3 or 4 seasons. And he has shown he can recruit, but I mean, after that performance against LSU for Georgia, it would be really hard for me to hire anybody from that offensive staff from the Georgia Bulldogs.
Again, I completely agree with you, but we don't know how much input he had into the offense. It's similar to look at the situation with Ohio State last year. They had two extremely capable defensive coordinators in Greg Schiano, who's been an NFL head coach, and Alex Grinch, who did miracles at Washington State and then turned around and went to Oklahoma and has turned a top 100 defense into a top 30 defense. So there were just issues there. Doesn't mean that neither of them were capable. There were just issues that went beyond that. So again, there are failing companies that have intelligent, hardworking, talented people working there. So it's possible. I understand your concern on the surface. That makes total sense. You're totally valid in your analysis at the surface.
I mean, yeah. I'm just kind of just speaking my mind. Two other quick points I want to make that I can think of as of right now. Do you think that Urban Meyer or Lincoln Riley are going to leave? Well, not Urban Meyer, but do you think Lincoln Riley is going to leave Oklahoma for that Cowboys job? The Dallas Cowboys.
Urban Meyer or Lincoln Riley?
Yeah. Or I've been hearing this one, Dan Mullen.
So you're asking me about all three of them? I have no idea what the Dallas Cowboys are doing. They have been hiring a coach who seems to have it all together when you watch him and listen to him speak, in Jason Garrett, but the results have been forever in coming. I have no idea what Jerry Jones sees in Jason Garrett in regards to he just doesn't get the job done. So I don't know what. So to have me predict what Jerry Jones is going to do in hiring the next coach, I have no clue, because I don't know that Jerry Jones, except for making money and making good business decisions, knows anything about running a football team. He needs to turn that over to a football guy.
Yeah. I mean, I could sit here for hours and make fun of Jerry Jones and how he's probably just going to most likely just keep chasing Garrett and not just hire another puppet. But, I mean, it is what it is. But I think it would be interesting to see maybe an Urban Meyer as the Dallas Cowboys head coach. I think that will be interesting. And one other quick point I want to make here. I'm absolutely done with divisions and conferences. I think there should be no divisions and conferences as far as I'm concerned. It's absolutely embarrassing, some of these conference championship games. I know in the ACC, I think Virginia would have gotten that number 2 seed this year, but it's been absolutely embarrassing. For instance, I think Penn State is better than Wisconsin, and I think if you go to the SEC, I think Alabama, maybe not Alabama, but I think Auburn. I know they face Georgia and they face Florida, but I think if you give Auburn give them a schedule that's just not in a division, like you have to play the 6-7 teams in the SEC West. I think if you sit there and maybe just make it 9 conference games, I think Auburn could have came in second in the SEC this season. But that's just me. And maybe even Florida as well. Who knows? But I'm absolutely done with divisions. And Mark, I think I already told you this, but I am not for the 16 playoff anymore. I'm for the 18 playoff. But I need that AFC to be a group of 5 team.
Amen, McD. Coming over to my side.
And I'll talk to you more about it in another phone call after the season ends on how to really fix the whole thing. But the problem with the 16 playoff, I think more than anything, is that there's just too many teams that I think deserve to be in the playoffs. and it doesn't really give. Well, in my scenario, I think I had the group of 5 as a 6 seed, but it just doesn't really give that 6th and 7th seed much. Like it's kind of not fair to them because they probably deserve just as much as the 5th seed. So, and I don't think they should be like conference, like automatically like conference bids or anything. Like I'll get into it at another call. I don't want to spoil what exactly what I think, but. For the 18 playoff. But that's all I have, Mark, for you right now. Thanks for taking my call, and go Terps. We're going 7-5 next year.
Thanks, McD. Love your optimism, McD. Oh, we got another call coming in. So my intent here, and again, it was an ill-fated attempt, is I received in excess of 600 comments on the Clemson video that I shot earlier about Dabo Swinney whining. And then I had Pigskin Pete on, who Pigskin Pete, then responded. We got his take and over 600 comments. And so I wanted to respond to those, but evidently that's going to be at a later date. Maybe I've messed up the phone call here. Is anybody on the line?
Hello.
Oh, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Yo, Mark, what up? It's Deep.
Deep, what's going on, man?
Not much. Typical Monday blues, you know.
Monday blues.
Day has started. Yes. It's kind of that awkward period between Thanksgiving and Christmas where, you know, you still got to work, but you also know that, like, the holidays are, like, around the corner as well. So, you know, it's kind of that weird time. And there's no more college football either for about 2 weeks, I believe. I know there's the Army-Navy game coming up this weekend, which I'm not a giant fan of, but, I mean, I'm sure there are people who consider it very important to them for, you know, tradition and will probably be watching it.
Sure.
But, you know, there's really not much in the world of college football in terms of, you know, viewing events for the next couple of weeks, I believe.
Absolutely.
Starts in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, so we've got to wait until a week from Friday. So we've got about a 2-week, close to a 2-week lull, unless you run a YouTube channel. Then you've got plenty to do.
Right. Which I'm actually thinking of starting one myself. But
Awesome.
It wouldn't be related to college football.
Okay.
But, or maybe I can make some videos on college football. A lot of these YouTubers just like make random videos and it just goes viral. But yeah, man, I just wanted to check in with you since you had a comment show about the college football playoffs. You know, just reaction to like the New Year's Six Bowls and stuff. I got to say, man, I was a little bit surprised when Alabama did not make a New Year's Six Bowl. Now, I'm not like kind of trying to defend Bama or anything, but I'm a little shocked that, you know, Alabama, the way they played and the way they had those 2 very close losses, you know, did not get a New Year's Six Bowl, but Georgia did. Now, I understand Georgia played in the SEC championship game. They won their division, but, you know, I think Alabama is a better team than Georgia. Deserves to be in at least a New Year's Six Bowl in some kind of at-large bid. But that's just me.
Well, being the better team doesn't necessarily have a whole lot to do with it. It has something to do with it, and we obviously don't know who the better team is. But so theoretically, Deep, so we've got the 4 teams in the playoffs. So then theoretically with the other 4 New Year's Six Bowls, you would have the next 8 ranked teams. So you should have teams 5 through 12 would theoretically be the next teams that should make the New Year's Six. Correct? Do you follow me?
Yes, depending on the rules.
Well, sure. No. Before I get to the rules, yes, just theoretically, if we had the best teams in the best bowls, we would have rankings 5 through 12 represented in the New Year's Six Bowls. Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Correct.
But then we've got a group of 5 that needs to make it. So then that typically takes a team that's ranked 15th to 20th, something in that range. So that's Memphis.
Yeah, and I gotta bring up another point on that. I think that more than one group of 5 team should, if they're good enough, warrant more than one group. I mean, New Year's Six reservation. Like I think that there could be multiple Group of Five teams this year that are worthy of a New Year's Six bowl. If you get what I'm saying.
Sure.
Boise State, App State. I believe it was Memphis that's really good, right?
Yes, Memphis made it. So what's your measurement or your dividing line for being good enough as a Group of Five?
Well, I think you win your Group of Five conference. I mean, like every Power Five conference, they basically get an automatic bid to a New Year's Six bowl. And, if you don't get in automatically, the runner-up will get in if, the conference winner will go to the college football playoff, right? And so I think it's a little bit unfair on the Group of Five if they're going to be ranked and there's only one kind of reservation that you give them for a bowl. And I think that, it also gives those schools that are underrepresented and all that, some more viewership and, some more attention. I
gotta say, Deep, I'm surprised at your thought process here. I don't think it's flawed. Well, I do think it's flawed somewhat, but that's a debate here ready to ensue. But in regards to you usually, it seems as though based on our discussions that you are more interested in watching the term that you like to throw out there, the blue bloods and the rest of the Power Five play football and don't seem much interested in the Group of Five teams. So I'm surprised that you were defending them and wanting to see more of them represented in the New Year's Six.
Well, absolutely. I mean, if you're going to take the effort to rank them, and if you're going to take the effort to play out of conference, and if you're also going to take the effort of having those out of conference games, in the regular season and then beating, right? I mean, we've seen on a consistent basis these Group of Five teams beating really good Power Five teams, and it's been happening almost every year. So I just think it's good for college football and the sport of college football if we kind of grow the awareness of these programs. Now, college football is already very fragmented as it is, based on our conversations we've had in the past about all of these different conferences and 4 spots and not every conference making it and, differences between each conference and potentially expanding the playoff and I mean, this whole list of things. But I think what makes college football so exciting is that the regular season is the playoff. And like every single game, every single week matters. And I think that as you create this playoff, and I think it's already good enough at 4. I think it may be a little bit too much at 4 even. I mean, I think even 2 would be very exciting. Like the BCS the BCS era, man, like everybody was glued to their TV every single week.
Yeah, I was glued to my TV, shouting at the TV, talking about all the teams that got ripped off. I'm sure we've had this conversation, Deep. The BCS was a disaster, was an utter disaster.
It was tradition, man. Like
tradition. That's a tradition?
Yeah.
It lasted from 1998 to 2013. It was a 15-year tradition.
Right, and I was born in 93, so. But yeah, I mean, look, long story short.
That thing was a debacle from the first time they tried it, 1998. It was a disaster.
True, but I think it's better than awarding national championships after the regular season and after bowl games.
Well, at least that was honest.
What do you mean?
At least it was what it reported itself to be. At least what it was okay, this is what it is, whether fair or not, this is what we're doing. It wasn't this mythical, we have magically selected the 2 best teams and don't try to refute that. Here are the 2 best teams. At least it was honest to say, a lot of people got together and voted. And if anything, that was more democratic with having like 60 people vote than having 13 people go in a room, make a decision and come out and change their minds on what the criteria is every other week. I'm not saying this is the way it should be done. Don't get me wrong. I don't think we should be voting for national champions, but at least it wasn't a farce.
Yeah, I mean, I have to kind of slightly disagree with you on that in the sense that the 13-person committee, by and large, for the most part, aligns with the AP poll or the coaches poll. I mean, it's pretty identical. And the entire purpose of, I think, having the committee, and the reason I like the committee, is that there's actually people having, legitimate debates and having a set of legitimate criteria, which some people could consider legitimate or illegitimate, but I think it's good to have certain criteria like conference championships head-to-head, like the 3 or 4 different criteria they list on their website in determining those 4 best teams, right? I think that it's a lot better than, like you said it yourself, either voting for it or having a computer and a bunch of votes and a system like, basically kind of aggregate those results and determine what would be the hypothetical 2 best teams. And there's some controversy, but I think that's the beauty of college football, right? I mean, it's something that keeps us excited because we're always thinking who could be the best team in the country, and argue and debate. I think that if it became the NFL, I think it would be boring. Like, I think it would be just too standardized. Like, these teams will make the playoff, these teams will have a wild card, and then, we'll have these playoff games. And also, like, the difference between college and the NFL, too, is, like, there's a lot of teams. Like, there's a shitload of colleges that have D1 programs. There's like 129 or 130 or so FBS programs.
My question,
There's
Deep.
no way you can create a playoff system for that. There's no way.
If the NFL is so boring, why is it by far, it's not even close, the most popular sport in the United States?
Well, it's still American football, and it's the only professional version of the sport that is being played. And, different cities are only going to be following those teams because those are the sports teams of that city. And larger cities are going to have a lot of viewership because they have a lot of people and they have a lot of money attached to it. I mean, history but yeah, I mean, maybe if the NFL had like a competing league and it was kind of structured similar to, but I think the NFL has a monopoly too, right? I mean, there have been so many competitors that tried to establish some market share with the NFL, but they haven't gotten to that level, right? I mean, we saw some of these other leagues last year. There was a league that came and it didn't work out, right? I don't know what it was called, the AAFL or something. But yeah, man, I just think that college football is way too big of a sport to standardized. I think eventually there will be an 8-team playoff because that just seems like the way that people, like the fans, want it to go. But I mean, I wouldn't say that system would be perfect either, right? I mean, you're gonna have these 5 Power 5 champions, and then you're gonna have like 3 at large. Like, how do we select the at large? There'll be debate and controversy, and a whole bunch of I guess people being mad because people will always be mad regardless of what system we have. I feel like.
Oh yeah, well, that's just human nature. Is that there are a lot of mad, upset, ungrateful people out there. They're going to be mad about something. I wouldn't be mad if we came up with an objective system. I certainly wouldn't be because I think that's part of why we play sports. I think that one of the reasons we play sports is to have a fair competition to determine who the best team is.
Okay, so let me ask you this: like, what would be a fair kind of system?
To have an objective playoff system that represents each conference. That's the base of it right there.
Regardless of how good or bad the conference is.
Who's to say how good or bad the conference is when they don't play enough non-conference games against each other to determine that?
But you do agree they do play, and they generally play every year, pretty much. Like, some out-of-conference game will be played with different interconferences. Texas played LSU, Oregon played Auburn, and we got to see the strength of the conference relative to those teams because they ended up being very good teams or very bad teams in the case of, I guess, Texas is a team, like average team.
We got to see Oregon play Auburn. You think that's a meaningful sample size to determine how good the Pac-12 is, to have one out of its 12 teams play one other team in a non-conference game the first week of September. And that's really the only meaningful game that we had in the Pac-12 in regards to them playing any non-conference games that were meaningful against top-notch teams. Maybe the Notre Dame games, you could point to those as well.
That problem is not the problem of the system. That's the problem of the athletics directors that run these colleges.
Which is the system. That's the system.
You could say that, but I mean, you could also say that like these teams are going to be choosy and picky about who they play and how they play.
That's the problem. Do NFL teams or Major League Baseball teams decide who they're going to play? No. Why are schools determining who they're going to play? That's ridiculous. Baylor played 3 teams that won like 6 games total in the non-conference. Stanford went and scheduled Notre Dame, Central Florida, and Northwestern. You know, there's just complete inequality in non-conference scheduling because we are allowing the schools to schedule their own games. That makes absolutely no sense.
Yes and no. Like, if a school does not have the right to pick their own out-of-conference schedule, then that can create some issues with the sovereignty. Because, as I told you, right, like college football is not pros. Like, there's 130 colleges.
Okay.
FBS, 130 D1 FBS programs. There's no objective way, and you said it yourself the last time we had this conversation, there is just no objective way that we can have an equal measurement of how good these 130 schools are against each other. So 1, there's only a 12-game schedule. 2, there's different, you have to have these different conferences because there's 130 of them. And then 3, like, you know, they're just different schools altogether, right? Like, you know, like they're different. Like, I mean, Group of 5 is different from FCS, which is different from Power 5, right? I think that the system isn't going to be perfect regardless of how you do it. I mean, it seems to me that you want that 18 playoff, correct me if I'm wrong, or maybe a 16-team playoff or something like that. I think that'll eventually happen, but I think you just got to wait till the TV contract expires, and then people will have their own kind of rendition. But I love the 14 playoff because it's so exciting to kind of see, even as a neutral fan, right? Because Texas did not.
Deeper Rot's gone. Must have been an act of God. All right, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Breaking down the game we love. So there might have been a section of comments in the live chat that I did not take to the screen. So again, I've explained this a number of times in which I will get to that call in just a second. So what happens is that I basically just start at the top and I run through all the comments. And if you guys are conversing with yourselves, that's great. I'm basically not going to take those comments to the screen, but I'm going to take every other comment to the screen. But then at some point it resets. And so right now the comment that is on the screen is from 12:23, so 26 minutes ago. So if it resets, I then lose whatever period of comments, a section of comments, I lose those comments and I can't get those back. So I know a number of people have complained in the past to say, Mark, you ignored my comment or you're ignoring me. No, I'm not ignoring anyone. If you could see the application that I'm using, you would know that it resets every so often. I don't know what triggers it, but then I lose a section of comments and I can't grab those comments. So we're at 12:23 with a Deep Rot's comment about Nebraska is getting better. 4-8, 5-7. All right. I had also wanted to get to these Clemson comments. You talk about comments. My goodness. As Reasonable Gump said last night when he called last night or the night before, whenever it was, these Clemson people are going crazy on me. I don't think they really listen. This is the only, well, there's a few frustrating things about doing what I do here. Most of it's very rewarding, but there's a few things. It's when people don't listen to what you say. They take about 3 phrases and then they run with them and they don't put them into context, or they don't listen to the entire video or don't listen to the entire discussion, and they go crazy and get offended. And so I know Dabo Swinney's a great guy and a great coach. I tried to state that very clearly to start the video. There can be no criticism of what Dabo Swinney has done with the Clemson program. How could anybody criticize in any way what he has done with that program? He has taken a top 40 program and made it arguably the best program in the country with a whole lot of help, certainly, of course. But he's a great, great football coach, motivator, and by all indications that we know, in public persona, role model to these young men. Okay. He simply has taken it upon himself. And I'm not saying that I would not be frustrated as well if I was Dabo Swinney and I was the best team in my conference and arguably the best team in the country, and the rest of the conference sucked, and I had to defend the play of my team versus the other teams in the conference, and therefore, by extension, I had to defend the conference, because I think he's caught in the middle. I think he's caught in just basically stating, hey, we're our own football team, our own university. This is our program. I have nothing to do with the other 13. They just happen to be in the conference. It's not my responsibility. They need to get their act together. But I think he balances that out with, or attempts to, with towing the company line, the conference line. All these coaches, especially some of them that have been aligned with that particular school and therefore that conference for a long time, take it upon themselves to defend the conference. And I understand that, because by extension, you're defending your own validity, your own credibility, your own value when you say we play in a good conference. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, this is Steve.
Hey, Steve, what's going
I know
on?
There's a lot of I'm going good, boss. Hey, I know there's a lot of comments for Clemson, but to be honest, Clemson is like an Olympic gold medalist playing in the Special Olympics with their current division. Like, I mean, it's the worst conference in college football, and everybody knows it, and you don't have to be that talented to dominate that conference. But down in the SEC, where we have real football teams, you have the Gators, and I do want to get your opinion on how to get them across that threshold to a next championship, the national championship.
Okay, so for the Florida Gators, obviously their main competition right now is Georgia. They are stuck between Georgia and the rest of
More so than LSU, you think?
Well, I'm talking about let's start with their division.
In the East?
Yeah.
Okay,
so in the East, Georgia is not clearly, but decidedly the best roster, the best talent. They have recruited Kirby Smart, top 3 recruiting classes for the 3 years that he's been there. So they have a loaded roster. Florida is on that next tier all by themselves. And we've seen that the last 2 years. Florida has played Georgia extremely well, but we've been able to clearly tell who the better team is on the field, but it's not substantial. There's not a huge gap there. They've lost by a score this past year, and the previous year was like 36-17, but it was a 1-point game at some point in the fourth quarter. So there's not a substantial gap. I also believe, based on what I've perceived of the coaches handling games, game management, concepts on offense and the passing game, that Dan Mullen is a better in-game coach and preparation coach for the game than Kirby Smart is. Kirby Smart has major issues in terms of time management, more so game management, and preparing his team for these games. They are playing down to other teams. So Florida doesn't necessarily need to, if this continues, necessarily need to match their recruiting level, but they got to come closer than they are right now. So this could certainly take place next year.
About that,
Yep.
You're absolutely right with the recruiting. But what I don't get with Florida struggling is we do have Dan Mullen now, and he is a quarterback guru. You know, this is Tim Tebow's coach we're talking about.
Yep.
And he's doing a fantastic job. I absolutely love him. I think he's the best pick we could have had, and I hope he stays with us until retirement. But, you know, Florida puts out such a high amount of players into the NFL. We have talent, and now we have the coach, and I know he's not the best coach in college football, but I would say he's top 5, top 6. And I don't feel like we're making the progress that we should be making into his tenure here.
You don't think you're making progress?
Well, I mean, we're making progress, but I don't feel like we've taken a much bigger step than we did last season.
Yeah,
I at least wanted to beat Georgia this year with them having their obvious struggles.
Well, when you say at least beat Georgia, you're talking about a team that many people picked to win the national championship, including yours truly, to start the season. So definitely they were a top 5 team most of the season.
Yeah.
And even in losing
Not
this
to take
final
away
game,
from Georgia.
they're still the 5th, rated the 5th best team in the country. But that's the hurdle. That's the hurdle. In one sense, you did not progress this year. You're still second in the East. You're still going to a New Year's Six bowl game. You're still on that same plane. You did win one more game than you did last year. You still avoided. So let's see. Florida lost to LSU on the road. So you lost to the number 1 team on the road. You had a lead in the second half of that game, and you played the game that we just mentioned against Georgia. You didn't have the letdown that you had like you did against Missouri, losing by 17 points at home last year. What was the other game that you guys lost?
For years.
Yeah, so you lost to Mizzou at home last year by 2 scores. You obviously lost to Georgia. What was the third loss? You lost to Kentucky last year. So you eliminated those letdowns against a Missouri type program and a Kentucky type program this year. And obviously everybody's losing to LSU, and you played them about as well as anyone. So I think you made progress.
Yeah, I just, I hope for a little bit more because I do have so much faith in Dan and his schemes and the way he's brought back the Swamp's atmosphere. I wanted to go a little bit further this season, and I do agree we took a step forward, but I believe we were capable of taking 4 steps forward if we had really tried harder, and I know it doesn't help with Felipe Franks going down. And even though Trask is amazing, it's a whole new quarterback who has to adjust and the team has to pull together. Even though we ended up playing better with Trask than we did with Felipe, I believe, this season. I don't know. I just feel like we should have made a little more progress, especially with how close we kept it for the majority of the game with LSU. Granted, Georgia was one of the favorites picked at the beginning of the season, like you said, to be number 1 this year. I didn't think that. I think even number 5 might be a little high. I'd put them closer to 6 or 7, but my vote doesn't matter. Playing so good against LSU, and I think they're the best team in the country. I just wish we could have done a little better with Georgia. I think we struggled more against Georgia, who is nowhere near number 1, I think, than we did with number 1.
True.
It's painful. I know.
It's painful, really. I think your program's in a good place. You took over a 4-win program when Dan Mullen stepped in. He's raised the credibility, the recruiting, and the results on the field immediately. He went 10-3 last year. He's an opportunity to go 11-2, and again, eliminated the disappointing upset losses to teams like Kentucky and Missouri this year. They lost to 2 teams that you would expect them to lose to, and I know that you need to win those games eventually. You need to get out of this place, but there was substantial progress the first year, and there was another level of progress this year, I believe.
Now, just to make 2 more quick points. I do think LSU is the second best team in the country, but I hope they get the pants beat off of them. As my best friend says, Urban Meyer is the Benedict Arnold of college football, especially when it comes to Florida with him leaving us the way he did in the condition he did to go play for one of our rivals. So I hope Ohio gets their pants beat off. And my last question is, I want to know who your home team is because I never hear a bias from you. You could take the worst team in the country and find something good about them. I was just curious who you root for.
Well, I'm curious about the statement you just made. So I understand that Florida fans are upset with Urban Meyer leaving, and that
doesn't describe describe
Okay,
it. We would like
okay.
him to face the firing squad.
Okay. How many national championships has this program won in its history?
3.
Three. And he won 2 in 3 years. I would
But
think that the man
problem
could
is
go
he
down there and
won
walk
those
on
2
water.
championships. Well, he won 2 championships by building a program around 2 players, Tim Tebow and Percy Harvin, knowing that he wasn't doing the recruiting that a dynasty team, an elite team like Florida, needed. And then as soon as Tim Tebow went on his own way and Percy Harvin was out of the picture, he dropped us like a hot potato and jumps to a rival. I mean, if there's not a bigger slap in the face in college football.
Is Ohio State a rival of Florida?
They were. I mean, we played in a national championship together. In the feud after, the smack talk after the championship was as bad as the aftermath of that hurricane game between LSU and Florida. I mean, it was terrible. And then him leaving us after that didn't make it any better. For a short time, they weren't a rival in the way that Tennessee has been a forever rival. But yes, for a short time when we were at that elite level, yes, Ohio State was a rival.
Okay.
Short-lived as it was.
Well, when people ask me who I root for and who's been my team, it has been the same team my entire life. And I find it amusing. I don't shy away from answering this question because many people will tell you right in the live chat who I root for. But at the same time, you get a little commotion going on there.
So, who was your team?
So let me explain something here real quick. So I find it amusing because there's a couple different reasons why I don't publicize it on a regular basis and get on here like a lot of people and wear all sorts of gear and do that sort of thing. First of all, I love the sport of college football. I enjoy it. I consider myself some level of historian. I'm not going to call myself an expert per se, but I've immersed myself in college football. Well, I appreciate that. I've immersed myself in college football. I'm at the level of having 18 to 20 boxes of just sporting news and Sports Illustrateds in my basement, and boxes of VHS tapes that I used to tape like college football games on and watch them and rewatch them. But with YouTube, you don't need to do that.
I would testify for you on that I believe it.
And that can recite every, bowl game practically back to the 1960s, all that sort of thing. So I don't say that to be arrogant or say that just to say that I'm a nut, basically, is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that that's valuable information. I'm just saying that's just me. So I have a sportscasting background, and when I decided to do this, I just wanted it to be fair and unbiased and neutral, and I wanted to come across as an analyst and to just have fun discussing and debating and analyzing the sport. And certainly I wouldn't.
I think you nailed that.
Thank you.
I get the most professional, unbiased vibe from your show. I absolutely love your show.
I appreciate that.
It actually made me care about teams outside of the SEC.
Well, thank you, Steve.
For SEC fans, because we feel like we're the only conference.
So I covered the SEC for 6 years. I was a sports director at a CBS station in Mississippi for 6 years. And so I covered the SEC. I went to the Alabama, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State games on a regular basis in particular, and all the SEC championship games and bowl games and so forth. So I became immersed in, after watching from afar the SEC on a regular basis and knowing all the names and the teams and watching all the games, actually going to the games, covering the sports, getting to know the players and the coaches. And yes, it's unlike any other setting for college football in regards to the loyalty and the allegiance and the camaraderie in the conference, rooting for each other. I think there's some of that in the Big Ten. I don't really see it anywhere else. I see it in the Big Ten, but to a lesser degree, but nowhere challenges the SEC when it comes to pulling together and rooting for the SEC. Absolutely. So I grew up in Ohio. I'm an Ohio State fan.
Okay. All right. That explains why you don't hate Urban Meyer. That nails it on the head.
Well, I told as many people as I could get to when Ohio State hired Urban Meyer. I said we just won a national championship.
You did.
And
Yeah, because Ohio always had the talent, and with a coach like Urban, as much as I can't stand him, and I hope his hair all turns gray and falls out, he is one of the best coaches in college football. I'd say next to Nick Saban, probably.
Yeah. But I kind of refrain from just talking about that just again because I like to attack the sport from a neutral standpoint as best I can. I will admit it's impossible to do. I try to remove all the scarlet and gray, but I am going to admit it's impossible. But to the point when people get on me for being an Ohio State fan, I do remind people, and they can look up the links, that in 2016, I got on here and I ranted and raved and practically threw the desk over to say that Penn State should be in the playoff. Ohio State should not be in the playoff.
Yeah.
Penn State got ripped off. So I try to keep it neutral as best I can. And so I try to keep that under wraps because I find it amusing when people criticize me for either liking or disliking a particular team. So a couple people yesterday guessed me to be an Alabama fan for some reason. So I find that amusing when people try to guess who I root for. Oh, I think we lost our call. So anyway, that was Steve on the line. Yes, so that was Steve on the line. Steve, I appreciate the support, and I appreciate the compliments and so forth. All right, folks.
The call will start at the beep.
Hey, it's Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Hey, Mark, this is Eli.
Eli, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing just fine. I see you're pretty active in the live chat tonight.
Yeah.
What's
So
on
I
your
was
mind?
wondering, what are your thoughts? What?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I wanted to first ask you, what are your thoughts on, some of the coaching hires? And I first wanted to specifically talk about Mike Norvell. Do you think he's the answer to make Florida State great again?
He's not an obvious choice to make them great again. I think that he's been a capable coach. The difficult analysis to make is that he took over a program there in Memphis that Justin Fuente had put on its feet. So Justin Fuente did the heavy lift in taking a Memphis program that was winning 2 or 3 or 4 games a year and making it what it is right now. And Mike Norvell just continued that. So it's kind of difficult to judge whether he's capable of making that type of improvement to Florida State. But in regards to being an offensive mind, he's considered to be one of the very best. And he has certainly run that program well. But again, it was given to him in good shape.
Okay. So, but if you were the AD, would you have made the hire, or would you have, or would you have looked for someone else?
There are some other coaches I would have hired above Mike Norvell, and I really like Matt Campbell at Iowa State. I don't know that he would have left there to go to Florida State. I would think that he would want that that elevation in status. I'm trying to think who else is out there. Who else would be out there? People talked about James Franklin. I'm not a huge James Franklin fan. I think he's a lot of hype, and he is a good recruiter. I don't necessarily know that he's a great coach, but he's a good coach. He's capable.
Did he do really well at Vanderbilt, which is
he did.
Really tough place?
Absolutely, he did. He went 9-4 2 consecutive years. You're absolutely right. We were debating about James Franklin a couple weeks ago on the Florida State show, and I was actually saying, if you want to point to James Franklin's best work, you go back to Vanderbilt, where he took a team that was missing postseason play, and he went 9-4 2 consecutive years. He was helped out by bad schedules, but still 9-4 2 consecutive years at Vandy is quite an accomplishment.
And remember, Penn State was also dealing with the whole Jerry Sandusky stuff too, so they were in shambles. I know Bill O'Brien, but he was only there for 2 years, so they're still kind of reeling from all that.
So my thought on that, Eli, is that Bill O'Brien did the messy work. He had to take that thing when it was the stigma of stigmas in college football because of all that despicable behavior, and had to take that over when it was not necessarily just a football issue. It was a culture issue. It was an administrative issue. It was all of that mess. And I was thinking at the time, how in the world is Bill O'Brien going to be able to attract quality football players to Penn State? Why would you go to Penn State when you can't go to a bowl game and you're going to have people making fun of you and criticizing you and judging you? How in the world is he going to hold this thing together? They're going to win 2 or 3 games for the next 5 years. But he did. And then by the time James Franklin got there, that portion of it was removed. That portion of it, they had made their way through. Now, what he had to deal with were scholarship reductions that depleted the roster. And so from a football standpoint, he didn't get Penn State at full strength, but they were a few years into that. And he did only go 7-6 his first 2 years. So he basically did maybe not quite as good a job on the field as Bill O'Brien did those first 2 years. And then it took a third year before he had a breakthrough.
Okay. But Penn State's they're pretty close to being an elite program.
Sure.
They're not quite on that level yet, but they're really close. I think he's actually done a spectacular job. And I don't like Penn State one bit, but I gotta give him credit where it's due.
He's a good coach. I don't think he's a great coach. He's a good coach.
Yeah. And then, I guess another one I wanted to mention that was seemed a bit off the wall is, what the heck was Missouri doing hiring Eli Drinkwitz? I mean, he was at App State for 1 year. I think that was a very risky hire.
It sure seems like it. And again, there's
Scott Satterfield built that program.
Exactly. Yep.
I don't know. It could work out, but it seemed like he just took over a team that was ready-made, that was returning a whole lot of experience. It's like he almost couldn't fail. Is he going to be able to do the same thing at Missouri? That's kind of maybe not a total dumpster fire, but not in a very good situation. I think I won't be surprised if he ends up being fired in a few years.
Anything else on your mind, Eli?
Well, let's see. Well, I was in the live chat. I was just debating about the whole 16-team playoff, and the one thing I wanted to mention is what the matchups would have been just based on what the CFP's rankings were, even if I don't totally agree with them. So, in the 1-16 matchup, it would be Miami, Ohio versus LSU. 2-15, it would be Florida Atlantic versus Ohio State, and then you'd have App State, Clemson, and then I'm trying to remember, the fourth would be Oklahoma versus Boise State, and the fifth would be Georgia versus Georgia versus Memphis. I can actually see that being an upset spot in a hypothetical 16-team playoff. And then 6 and 11 would be Oregon, Utah, and then trying to remember, 7 versus 10 would be Baylor and Wisconsin, I believe. And then trying to remember who 8 and 9 would be. I know it'd be Florida versus someone. I'm forgetting who that was now.
Yeah, I don't know. Did somebody post that?
Yeah, or Penn. I think it'd be Florida versus Penn State or something like that.
Yeah, so that would be all the conference champions, the 10, and then 6 wild cards, correct?
Yeah, and I'm based on the CFP ranking because that's about the only thing I can really base that on, even though I do have some disagreements with it.
Yeah, it would be fun. I think you have I think you basically have the element of having the best teams in the country there, but you also represent the little guys. And so we either need to include the group of 5 or not include the group of 5, not make them and tease them to make them feel as though they're part of it when they're really not. And that's what's being done right now.
Well, another issue I have, which is I think people don't really talk about much, is I think people kind of touch on it, is the conference champions. Unless they're like Memphis that goes to a near 6 bowl, Like, what's the point of even winning their conference? I mean, Miami of Ohio won the MAC, and they're going to like the Lemon Tree Bowl against Louisiana Lafayette. I mean, it's dumb.
What's dumb about it?
Well, I mean, I feel like there should be like a lot more on the line for winning the conference. I mean, even
Yeah,
though
like
I personally think they should be in the playoff, even if they're not going to put them in the playoff, at least put them in a really good bowl game or something like that. You know, there's just like there's some of them are really great games, but they're not really much on the line.
Well, when I say that, I definitely agree with you, Eli, that that there should be a system that works toward a championship, a legitimate championship, an objective system for a championship, and either the group of five needs to be officially included in that, or they need to be discarded and to play their own championship, one or the other. There's this farce of pretending like they are part of the process, and they're not part of the process. Just because they rank the teams, they will never rank any of them in the top four. That's already been proven with UCF going undefeated 2 times, and going back to the BCS era, the Boise States and the TCUs, when they were not a Power 5, not being involved in the process. So I totally agree with you. So I'm not making fun of you when I was just wanting to get a further explanation of why that wasn't a good bowl game. But the problem is that outside of the playoffs, the bowl games are entertainment first and foremost. They don't there is no culmination or result that points toward a championship. They're played for, I don't want to say they're played for fun, because a lot of people call them exhibitions, but they count on the team's record and they count toward the rankings at the end of the season. And people actually remember who wins the Rose Bowl and the Orange Bowl and whatever games aren't part of the playoff. But to put Miami of Ohio, forget their record, as a MAC champion in a big bowl game, the problem is there, Eli, is nobody wants to see Miami of Ohio play football. So nobody wants to see them play in the Sugar Bowl.
Yeah. But I mean, like,
and watch them lose 52-10.
Yeah, or even a decent idea in this case would be even have like champion versus champion. Like maybe they could play the Conference USA champion Florida Atlantic, and you know what would be really a fun matchup would be Boise State versus App State.
Okay, it's an idea.
Yeah, I don't know, but I mean, and I've heard some people say like 18 playoff and include the group of 5 champion, which would be better. But then at the same time, you have a 1-loss Memphis, a 1-loss Boise State, and a 1-loss App State team, which are ranked pretty close together. It's like it's really hard to compare them because they play in different conferences.
Well, that's what we're doing with the Power 5. We have to do the same thing.
Yeah, because I mean, and I think Memphis was probably the best one, but I wouldn't be that surprised if App State could actually beat Memphis on the ball. Like I've seen App State play, and they look really, really good.
Absolutely.
And then one thing I'll say, I'm about ready to leave, but I'm actually really glad to watch the American Athletic Championship game instead of the SEC Championship game. I mean, SEC Championship sounded like a snooze fest. Well, the American Athletic game had me on the edge of my seat the whole time.
Sure. You're right.
Of course, Georgia's offense, watching their offense is like watching paint dry.
No question.
All right, yeah, I'm done. So thank you for taking my call.
Thanks, Eli. I appreciate the support. I appreciate you jumping on the live chat and getting on the phone tonight. You have a good night. All right. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking it down with everyone who's on the live chat right now. And again, at some point, I'm going to get to these Clemson comments because there were just so many of them. And again, I don't mind when people disagree with me or defend their team or their coach. It's just that when they don't listen to what came out of my mouth, I find it somewhat annoying. But that's part of the process. I probably don't listen to you guys either half the time. So my points were, number one, Dabo Swinney's an excellent coach. That can't be debated in any way. He has taken a top 40 program and made it arguably the best program in the country. Point number two, Dabo Swinney, by all indications, I don't know the man personally. I don't know if he's got any skeletons in his closet, but by all indications, he's a reputable guy, a man of character, a man of faith, and he's a good role model to his kids and loves his kids. Okay. Point number 3 is that Dabo Swinney does not have to make excuses for the ACC. He's not responsible for how bad the ACC is. However, let's start on the downside now. That Dabo Swinney had no reason to whine and complain about beating South Carolina 38-3 and being disrespected. And then when people point out that they're disrespected, or they start to throw out they this and they that, who are they talking? Who is he talking about is disrespecting him? There are 3 undefeated teams in the country. One of them has to be ranked number 1. One of them, this is high-level math, Dabo. But we've got 3 undefeated teams. So one of them has to be ranked number 1. One of them has to be ranked number 2. And the other one has got to be ranked number 3. Or if you were truly disrespected, we would rank you lower than that. That would be true disrespect. But you're in the top 3. And it's reasonable to think, Dabo, that your schedule does not compare to the other 2 undefeated teams. Therefore, you're basically going to be ranked 3rd. You want to be disrespected? Be Baylor, be Minnesota, lose a game and drop like 10 spots. Or go undefeated and be ranked 13th. Or like Minnesota 17th, I think, in the first ranking, if you want to be disrespected. So this whole thing about being disrespected is ridiculous, or they don't want us in the playoff. Who doesn't want Clemson? Who cares one way or the other if Clemson's in the playoff? Clemson fans, but I basically want Clemson in the playoff if they earn a spot, and if they don't earn a spot, I don't want them in the playoff. That's pretty much how I address that. And the problem with the playoff, not necessarily this year, the playoff committee lucked out that Utah didn't win or that Georgia didn't win. And so it was a clean cut at 4. But the only issue I have with the playoff and the playoff system is obviously we typically in 2014, 15, 16, 17, and 18, we had teams outside the playoff who I and any reasonable college football observer could make a valid claim that their resume was just as good as teams that were selected for the playoff. That's what's wrong with the system. You're leaving teams out that have just as good a resume and qualifications as the teams that are in the playoff. Not this year, but in 2014, 15, 16, 17, and 18. Yes. Just like in the BCS era. We can go through every season, and from 1998 through 2013, that's 16 football seasons. In at least 14 of them, I can tell you who was left out of the championship game, who had just as good a resume and qualifications as the teams that were selected to be in the championship game. So we have no different a problem now than we had before. Whereas in objective playoff qualifications, whether that be the NFL, the NBA, Major League Baseball. My daughter, when she was 12 years old, their local recreation, softball league even had an objective system to determine who made the playoffs. It's not difficult. Doesn't take a mathematician to figure it out. That used to just amuse me that, I'm watching college football and a bunch of people select who make the playoff, and my daughter's playing park and rec softball, and we can determine an objective system to determine who makes the playoffs. But we can't do this in major college football. That's the problem. All right. Should I answer your comments, or I want to get to these Clemson comments, these Clemson fans all over me. So Dabo Swinney, the next point was, he defended Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Wake Forest. And as I started to state before I got a call a few minutes ago, I understand he's in a tough spot because on one hand, he basically wants to say, the hell with the ACC. I don't care if we're bad and it's not my problem. It's not my responsibility. I coach the Clemson Tigers, and it's me, my coaching staff, our administration, our athletic department responsible for this. Let those 13 figure out how they can be better football programs. So I know he wants to say that, and he has to a certain degree, but he also wants to say, hey, wave the flag for the ACC. We represent the ACC, and we've got a great conference, and we play such competitive football. I understand he's in a tough spot, but don't do both. He does both, and don't make ridiculous comments that you can't back up or can't be substantiated in any way about Virginia, Virginia Tech, and Wake Forest being just as good as the elite teams in the other conferences.
The call will start at the beep.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Oh, Rogers, is this you, sir?
It is me. Who are you?
Hey, what's up, man? Yeah, man, I love the show. I'm on.
Thank you.
I watch it with my cousin Steve. We just called in. I want to comment. I'm a Florida Gator fan, and I want to comment on the Urban Meyer discussion. I'm not here to Urban Meyer bash, but I do think that Urban Meyer did Florida really dirty. I mean, I don't claim to be an expert on Gator sports, and I don't go real far back into history, but as a kid, I remember watching this series of games in high school. I'm young, man. I'm still in my 20s, and but I remember watching these games, man, and I'm like, man, I love watching Tebow. I got to meet Tebow, you know what I'm saying, and I got to watch the games, and I watched Urban Meyer build this dynasty Florida team centered around Percy Harvin, Tebow, and Chris Rainey, and the Pouncey boys. You know what I mean? And all that. And I think it was Ryan Cooper. I think that was his name. Ryan Cooper was one of the wide receivers. And we built this dynasty when did what no college team, even not as football, but with basketball as well. We went 2 national titles there too, back to back at the same time. No team in history has ever been able to do that. And Urban Meyer was a part of that. And as soon as Tim Tebow left, Urban Meyer's left with him. And as soon as that happened, Florida has been, has went to heck, has went to crap. And they went through so many different coaches. I think now they finally gotten some solid coaching. With this new coach they got, he's bringing back the team spirit, which I feel Tim Tebow was able to fire up this team and bring back Gator Nation as well. And they haven't had a player to really. I love Kyle Trask. I think he's doing great. He's a young quarterback, showing a lot of good talent. Also, another really good, cool talent I'm seeing. Is Joe, the LSU quarterback. That dude right there is something else. Watching him getting in the pocket, watching him maneuver his way around with dead accuracy. I love watching Joe Burrows. But back to the comment. What is your opinion on the whole Urban Myers thing?
Well, I've got a question for you. So Urban Meyer just leaving Florida is what gets you, or it's the way in which he left?
It's the way, it's the way in which he left. I'm going to stay on for a couple of years, help you guys maybe recruit some other, better key players, kind of leave off maybe a little bit better than just the year Tebow leaves, the year Percy Harvin leaves, Chris Rainey leaves, Pouncey leaves, all their main players are leaving, and then Urban Meyer leaves behind them and just leaves them behind. I don't, and it goes to Ohio State,
Okay. Well, Urban Meyer's from Ohio and has stated ever since he was a young coach that was his dream job to coach at Ohio State.
I get it. But I just maybe not so much as him going to Ohio State, just how he did it. I just wanted to share my comment on that.
So let's look through Urban Meyer's recruiting classes at Florida. So his 2005 class was ranked 12th in the country. Okay, that was the first year he was there. And then his 2006 class was number 2 in the country. His 2007 class was number 1 in the country. His 2008 class was number, it'll click for me, number 5 in the country. And his 2009 class, was number 7 in the country. And then, of course, he was there. His last season was 2010. And that class was number 1 in the country. So that's the awful roster that he left you with.
Well, I don't know. I just think he could have, done this a little bit better than just leave us high and dry the way he did. Another question I have is your opinion on, now that I know you're an Ohio State fan, do you believe that, who do you think is going to win this year? Do you think it's going to be Ohio State and LSU, or do you think Oklahoma has a chance in hell to even be able to help save themselves to a win, huge upset over LSU?
Oh, I think Oklahoma has about a 20 or 25% chance of winning that game.
Yeah. What about Clemson and Ohio State? What do you feel about that one?
I think that's a toss-up. I will not predict the game until we get close to the game, but I think it's a 50-50. I think those – oh, my goodness. So now that LSU's defense is playing so much better the last 2 to 3 weeks, I think that those 3 teams are head and shoulders above everyone else, including Oklahoma. And I think LSU is going to beat Oklahoma by, 2 touchdowns. And that the Clemson-Ohio State game is going to be a great game. And I think they're most likely the 2 best teams in the country, but I certainly wouldn't be shocked if LSU wins the national championship. The only thing that will shock me is if Oklahoma wins the national championship. If they get through, I'll be surprised. So,
that would be crazy.
Yeah, the other 3 are just loaded with NFL players on both sides of the ball and are complete teams. They're prolific offensively. They're just – Oklahoma is going to have happen what happened in the first half last year against Alabama. They're going to get beat up. They're going to get physically beat up. And they're not going to be able to keep up with those LSU wide receivers in the secondary.
They were getting beat up the other day with what was that? No, was that Baylor?
Yes.
They were getting beat up with. Yeah, they were getting beat. There was injuries left and right, and I was like, "Wow, this is." And same with Georgia.
Yep.
Like we were specifically saying if they do make it through this game, like with Georgia, if they make it through this game physically, they're gonna have. They don't want to go to this. With all the injuries they were having, they did not want to go to they would have been playing second string players. You know what I mean?
Yep.
But anyways, I appreciate the insight and comment. I love the show, Mark. We're gonna sign off here.
Well, I appreciate you calling to talk some college football, man. Have a good night.
All right, brother. God bless.
God bless you. Got a God bless. I think that's the first time. Man, I appreciate that. I got a God bless from Steve's friend. I don't even think I got his name. All right, Florida fans, they're calling. So listen up. I should have told them this. We will have 2 Florida segments coming up later this week. So hopefully they're listening right now. 2 Florida segments with David Waters from Gators Breakdown joining us on Thursday. I'll probably get that posted by Friday or Saturday. We're going to talk recruiting and, of course, the bowl matchup against Virginia. And Jackie Franchuli from Rivals, Gators Territory, is joining us this week as well. We've got a couple different USC guests coming on this week: Ohio State, Florida, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota. My goodness, Auburn, Penn State, UCLA. I know they're not in a bowl game, but we're getting you ready for National Signing Day, which is going to be, let's see, in 8 days. December 18th is National Signing Day. My rear end is going to be planted to this chair all day, National Signing Day, December 18th. And we are just going to pump out reports on National Signing Day like nobody's business. National Signing Day report after report after report after report. And then Thursday night, the same thing. Programming note, live streams coming up later this week. Florida State Seminoles live tomorrow night, Tuesday night, 7 o'clock Eastern time. And then we're talking Miami at 7 o'clock Eastern time with Cam Underwood, State of the U, 7 o'clock Eastern time, Thursday night. And then the Ohio State Buckeyes live show is Thursday night at 8:30 Eastern time. If you subscribe to the channel, I left that comment in the community section, and you should have received a notification on that. All right. The super chat's available. Somebody gave to the super chat. I apologize if I didn't catch that. Who is it? I'm scrambling around looking for that comment. Somebody helped me out on the super chat. So thank you so much for the contribution. I'll look it up. And again, I've got so much to catch up on once we get to the off season. Listen to this. I will get to this in just a second. In regards to recognizing all of you and your great support, because if you guys don't support and you don't watch and you don't like and comment and share and help with the super chat and go to Amazon and use the link in the Amazon description section of all the videos, the Amazon link. So my kids, from the time they were like 10 or 12 years old, they would just send me links. Their Christmas list was a bunch of links, and I would just have to go click, boom. I got the size, the color, the da-da-da-da-da, and I just buy the links and boom, I'm done. And then about 5 years ago, they're now 23 and 20. About 5 years ago, first it was my son that just said, Dad, I want money. Give me money. So whatever I budget each year for Christmas, boom, I go down to the bank, I get some shiny looking, nice, fresh bills, and that's Christmas. And you know, that takes something out of it. I would still fill up their stockings, but I've just been handing them money for 3, 4, 5 years. This year, it was just a courtesy call. I texted my 2 kids and said, what do you want for Christmas this year? Fully expecting that they would just say money. And they threw me a curveball, and they want me to buy them gifts. All right. So I've been handing money out, not just to my kids, but to all sorts of people in my life for a while now. So now I've actually I've been asking friends and family members and all sorts of people, what am I going to buy my kids? So that's been my dilemma. Not just analyzing the, Florida-Virginia game. But I did want to read this off very quickly here. So I'm already thinking about the off season, and I'm already collecting content topics that I'm going to attack. So my plan, and I've got to prioritize this. So I've got off-season priorities. So in terms of operations and business and marketing, new set, maybe various shot angles that I need to work out. It's not the best looking deal that I've got going right here. Lighting needs to be better. It's not too bad tonight, but the lighting needs to be better. Many of you have commented on that. I need to automate my mailing list. If you've not signed up to Mark Riders TV's Voice of College Football, my newsletter that comes out every week that I need to write at some point this week. Thanks for reminding me. Just go to markrogerstv@gmail and sign up for the newsletter. You only get one per week. I don't clutter up your inbox. It's an even exchange. Your email for my email. So it's not going to go anywhere else. People can vouch for that. There's about 100 people on the mailing list right now. But again, you go to markrogerstv@gmail. There you go. Send your email to my email, markrogerstv@gmail, and you can send me your requests and so forth there as well. Anyway, I need to automate the mailing list. I need to fix my call-in process. No, it doesn't work. Please, whoever's calling right now, call back in just a second. Bought all this stuff, to do this right, and it's not working right now. So we will get the call-in process fixed. So that's an off-season priority as well. And now I've got cables hung up all over the place. Patreon, I got to focus on that, and sponsorships and Amazon and all the affiliate marketing stuff. Radio shows. I've been on some radio shows and I need to get on more. Facebook, Instagram, learning analytics, education on analytics to increase the views and the subs and all of that. Business plan, live stream schedule. People are asking about a live stream schedule. Once we get to the off season, I want to set a live stream schedule that you can count on all the time. Product placement. Somebody gave me this idea for next football season to have you guys predict the games against me. We all predict the games and see who wins, who has the best record, straight up and against the spread. We will have a prediction. Also, do we have a college football fantasy league? Who would want to head that up for me? Voice of College Football branding. I got to work on branding and marketing and merchandise. Merchandise, maybe. Okay, in terms of you guys don't care about that stuff, but I've got to care about it. Okay, in terms of content during the off season, we will have our Mark Rogers TV Voice of College Football Player Award. So I will be highlighting and awarding Players of the Year in all the conferences, all 10 conferences. The Mark Rogers TV Voice of College Football Big Ten Player, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, the MAC Offensive Player of the Year, the Defensive Player of the Year, etc. Of course, recruiting updates and schedule rankings and schedule previews and recruiting rankings versus the results. So I want to take the recruiting rankings versus the results on the field to see what programs are overachieving and who's underachieving. For those of you who are around last offseason and previous off seasons, you know that I'm going to rank the conferences. Of course, I'm going to have my final top 25 that actually makes sense. I'm going to produce a video where I'm going to let everyone, we'll talk about the surprise teams from 2019 and the disappointments for 2019. We'll get into all-time rankings, working on that right now. People have made requests about, top 10 lists for the decade. So keep in mind, this is 2019. We are finishing a decade. And sometimes we lose track of that because it's not the 80s or the 90s. It's now, there's the aughts and then the teens. So it's 2010 through 19. It's a decade. So maybe I produce the top 10 games from the decade, or the top 10 quarterbacks, the top 10 running backs, the top 10 defenders, et cetera, et cetera. Position previews, recruiting, we'll do all that. Spring games, my conference realignment, my scheduling fix, both in conference and out of conference, shout outs, on and on and on. All right. Call right back and I'll get on the line and talk college football with you. I'm not going to get to these Clemson comments. We will look to do that another time. All right. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Who's on the line?
Nick.
Nick, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. What's up?
Nick.
Yes, Nick.
What's going on, Mark of college football?
How are you? Is something on your mind, Nick?
Okay, you're talking, but also the computer in my ear is talking, and it's confusing the fuck out of me.
Yes. I had an idea that Nick was a moron, and then he proved it. All right. R. Nelson, You were probably right. All right, all right, all right. Yes, Mad Max, tell all those Clemson folks out there, I love Dabo. He's good for college football. I love him. There's a little room to criticize and maybe call him out and hold him accountable for a few things that he had to say that were inaccurate or basically didn't make any sense. That's all I was doing. All right, folks, I think I've gone through just about all the comments. We've been on here for an hour and 41 minutes. I've pretty much done as much damage as I possibly can, and I knew better to do a live stream and think that I could go through the comment section of one of the videos. So I wanted to attack and really get in on the last top 25 that actually makes sense. There were a lot of good comments that came in response to that. Obviously, the Dabo whining brought a lot of comments from people, and I wanted to clear the air on those comments that are more than 600 comments on 2 videos. So thank you, even though most people called me all sorts of names. And then, of course, our Michigan videos from the past week drew a lot of comments as well. Wanted to respond to those. And, of course, all the college football playoff talk. All right. So if there's anything that you have sent in the live chat that you would like me to respond to, please copy and paste it and just go to the comment section of any of the videos and just leave it right there. Just copy and paste it, put it right there, and I will try to get to it. I hope all of you understand that I do look at the comments and I try to get to as many as possible. Especially if I see somebody new that's jumped online or something's especially insightful or irritates me, then I will respond to that. But I can't respond to everything. I haven't even looked at the total comments for this year in a long time. It was at 16,000 back in July. So we're probably at 35,000 comments this year. So thank you. And I will scroll through the rest of the comments from the live chat tonight. But again, if there's anything in particular you want to request or you want to ask or something that you want to get to me, leave it in the comment section of any of the videos. And again, I will remind you that the super chat is on. You can contribute to what we do here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. And our quest to do this full time, all the time, nonstop, full throttle. And I'm going to do this for the first time in a long time because I'm noticing somebody's name that I haven't seen before. This is Arctic Miner. Arctic Miner, welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Or should I say it like this? Welcome to Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Arctic Miner, I would love to know who you root for and how long you've been watching. And really, for a lot of you, I hate to pour all the attention on Arctic Miner because we've got R. Nelson, we've got Matt Strathis, we have some other names that I have not seen before or maybe just in the last few days. Joshua Haddon, I'm guessing, this is a guess. Joshua probably caught one of my Clemson videos from the last few days, and he is now watching. So, Joshua, that's a guess on my part. We are going to have Clemson Talk with Pigskin Pete coming up tomorrow. What a lineup I've got tomorrow. Now, those are not going to be live streams, but those will be posted in the next few days. We are going live tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Eastern time to talk Florida State. Florida State's taking on Arizona State in a bowl game. And all my predictions on all the bowl games. So, folks, I'll just let you know. Let's see, the conference championship weekend, I went 6-2 against the spread, 7-1 against the money line. and 58% against the spread on the season. You can get those predictions at the Voice of College Football community. The links in the description section of all the videos. Mark Rogers TV, the Voice of College Football. Who's on the line? Hello?
Go fuck yourself, Josh.
Okay, I think that's our last call for the night. This is what you get when you have a YouTube channel. The blessings and the curse of doing such things. You talk to a lot of great people, and so I have, by extension, been able to interact and engage with a lot of great people like you and some morons. So there's a few idiots sprinkled into all the great people. So it's certainly more good than bad. So thank you for joining. And again, we'll be back all day tomorrow with a number of posts coming your way here at Mark Rogers TV, the Voice of College Football. Please like, comment, share the videos, and subscribe. And we are done for the night. I will see you soon.